Assalamu alaikum. We'll be starting soon, so if we can actually have the sisters, if any of them wants to come in, we have seats on the left-hand side of the musalla for you guys. So if there are any brothers there, please move on over to the right-hand side. And if any sisters want to come inside, you can come through the back and sit in these seats, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. And we'll be starting very soon. Alright, inshallah, we're going to start now. So any brothers that are still on the left-hand side of the musalla, please make your way over to the right. And if sisters want to come in, please come in, and there are chairs available for you. Tonight's event is called Your Best Ramadan Yet. And we have with us Sheikh Uthman, who doesn't need any introduction, but just in ways of some, he's currently a PhD student in education at UCI. He's a consultant educator, mashallah. And he's also a sheikh. And he will be talking to us about how to survive our 16-hour fast, how we maximize our ibadah, and how we keep up with our health and fitness during this Ramadan. So without any more further ado, Ustad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك اللهم لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم بلغنا رمضان اللهم بلغنا رمضان اللهم بلغنا رمضان اللهم آمين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah everyone is doing well tonight. Tonight for the next 45 minutes or so, we would like to discuss the spiritual dimensions of Ramadan. And tomorrow, our beloved brother Rayhan Jalali will speak about more of the nutritional aspects. So what I wanted to start my talk about today was a quote from the Sahaba, which they had given to the Tabi'een. So the Sahaba were speaking to the generation that came after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had passed away. And they told them, the Sahaba, Abu Darda, Anas and Malik radiallahu anhuma, they said that if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to be revived today and to see the actions and the things that you guys do, he would not recognize anything of your actions other than your salah. It's a very powerful and a very scary statement that the Sahaba were warning just their students actually. People hardly removed a decade or two from the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that be careful of your behaviors because they're already showing deviation from how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to do things, and he would find what you do to be strange. And I want us to think about that as the undertone for this talk today. To really think about what was Ramadan like to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And I think we need to have this in our mind for a minute, because often in the modern world we think about how with the modern technology and the gadgets and the gizmos and the fast-paced world, how we can keep our religion up to date, so to speak. And if the Sahaba were worried that just 20 years after the Prophet ﷺ's death, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would not recognize the Ramadan of the Tabi'een, well, what would he think today, alayhi salatu wasalam? What would he think about the way in which we do things? So this is really the pretext I want us to think deeply about. Everyone gets exhausted throughout the year. It's kind of the end of June right now, the middle of June. Most of the students are getting off of school. Summer break is beginning. People are probably exhausted after a long year. They've been working a lot. They've been in school a lot. Whatever they've been doing, it's been very exhausting physically, mentally, and many other ways. And this is why people every single year, they decide that we want to take a vacation. Families decide that let's go camping, let's go visit family in another country, let's go to the forest, let's go somewhere else, a getaway. Go to relax so that our minds can be at ease from the day-to-day grind, from sitting in the office, from sitting and doing homework, from the traffic that we sit in. And that's something which is important. The human being needs to have this raha, this rest. And this is kind of the similar example of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has embedded Ramadan as not a religious act. It is a religious institution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, acknowledging that we get spiritually burnt out and exhausted throughout the year. The nature of the world eats at our nafs every single day, whether we like it. I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's a matter of fact that sitting in traffic is hard for you. Working in the office from 8 to 8 or 8 to 5 is difficult. Studying all day long, math and science, it's tiring. All the chores that we do is exhausting. It seems as if there's more work than there ever is time to do it. And so no one ever complains that I have too much time for Islamic studies. I have too much time to read Quran. I have too much time to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People complain we don't have enough time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite wisdom gave us this month of Ramadan as a spiritual getaway. It is a retreat. But it's a little bit different. When people think about a retreat, again, the scale of the materialist and the scale of the dunya, you envision maybe relaxing on a beach, drinking a cup of a coconut, and just kind of not thinking about anything. But in Islam, we have a very different notion of what it means to be in a state of peace, what it means to be in a state of spiritual rejuvenation. And this is why, for those of us who are here in this room, we look forward to Ramadan. Actually, if you think about it, it's kind of absurd. A non-Muslim, when he sees, you guys are looking forward to not eating, to not drinking, and to hardly sleeping, and to standing up for hours in a night. It seems very strange. And in this is the wisdom. And I want to get at what that means. What is Ramadan all about? What comes to your mind when the word Ramadan is said? Just give me a suggestion. What comes? What is it? Qiyam? What else? Fasting? What else? Taqwa? Okay. Quran, right? So certain things come to mind. Usually fasting is what comes to mind. And for many people, food actually comes to mind. Really, if you think about it, most people when they think about Ramadan, their eyes and they start daydreaming about the aloo puri and the halwa and the nahari they're going to have. All the wonderful foods that you don't get throughout the rest of the year, your wife or your mom is going to make for you in Ramadan. Right? And again, going back to that premise, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Ramadan, what do we think it looked like? Do we think he had a 5-course suhoor? Do we think he had a 5-course iftar? Obviously, we'd probably say this is not the case, right? So what I want us to think about, number one, is to acknowledge the fact that we probably haven't as a culture been practicing Ramadan the way that it was intended to be done by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think one of the reasons for this is the overemphasis on simply not eating and drinking. Because when one perceives that the goal of Ramadan is to just make it from the dawn until the Maghrib, not eating and drinking, then you think, okay, I can celebrate afterwards. I can celebrate before by eating very well, and I can celebrate after by rewarding myself with a lavish meal. But this is actually, in my opinion, and in what seems to be the ayat in the Quran, a misnomer. Because many people don't fast the month of Ramadan for legitimate reasons. Many of the elderly, the sick, the pregnant, the breastfeeding, many people have an excuse not to fast. And perhaps they make it up outside Ramadan, maybe they never have to make it up, maybe they do fidyah. But the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us actually, in these verses in Surah Al-Baqarah that talk about Ramadan, its purpose. And I want us to think deeply about this purpose and have it as really the forefront of our mind in this upcoming month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was revealed. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. So what does this mean? Is the month of Ramadan a month that is predicated solely on fasting? No, it is predicated on something else. هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. The whole ayah goes into this, giving us insight into what Ramadan really should be about. The month of Ramadan is that which the Quran was revealed as a guidance for mankind and proofs of that guidance. So whoever witnesses that month, then let him fast it. And whoever is traveling or he's sick, then he can make it up in other days. Allah doesn't want things to be difficult, He wants things to be easy. And in the end, He says what? So you would complete the month, and so that you could complete the month and glorify Allah because of what He's guided you to, and so you would be grateful. The month of Ramadan, my brothers and sisters, is a month of shukr for the Quran. Think about that verse. The month of Ramadan is that which the Quran was revealed as guidance to mankind and proofs of that guidance. So whoever witnesses this month, then let him fast it. Fast the month of Ramadan out of shukr for the Quran. Now what does that mean? What does it mean that Ramadan is a month of Quran? What does it mean that this is almost what fuels the obligation? Because you can fast outside of Ramadan. People can fast 3 days of every month. People can fast Mondays and Thursdays, but the month of Ramadan in particular has a unique system. So I said it is an institution. And if we are people who ignore it and treat it as a month of just not eating and drinking during the daylight hours, then it is a failed month. And this is what I was talking about, the null effects of Ramadan. SubhanAllah, it's amazing that we find people who fast for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and their lives don't get better. When the purpose, as Allah says, is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you would become people of taqwa, people who are protected, people who are near to Allah, who are aware of Allah. And one of the Imam Izz ibn Abdul Salam, a great scholar, he mentioned what this meant, that fasting the month of Ramadan is a means of taqwa. What is taqwa? He says it's a means of protecting yourself from hellfire. It's a means of protecting yourself from the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a means of protecting yourself from the heedlessness of your daily life. Most of us are busy every day. So Ramadan is protecting you from being that person who's living a frivolous life, who's not living a focused life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the month of Ramadan is a reminder that the Quran is the emphasis of this life. People are obsessed with different books, with blogs, with programs. Yet it's hard for people to become obsessed with the Quran for some reason, which is strange. I want to share a story that I think will provide some insight into some of the obligations of Ramadan, or the recommendations. That really goes back to the notion of the Quran being the fuel of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That we have revealed in the Quran that which is a cure, a shifa, and a mercy for the believers. What does that mean? Sometimes we think about it only to mean that, okay, if you practice the guidance, then that is the only form of guidance that the Quran has. There's a different form I want to speak about for a minute, and I want to take us through a hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radhiyallahu anhu. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he mentions that a group of companions, they went and they traveled. And as they're traveling, they passed by an Arab town. And they asked that Bedouin town to host them for the night. And those Arab Bedouins were harsh. They said, no, we don't want to host you. We don't want to give you food. We don't want to give you a place to sleep. So the Sahaba, they set up their tents in the outskirts of the town. And this hadith is in Bukhari. During this time that they're setting up their camp, the leader of this tribe was bitten by a poisonous animal and it caused him to be paralyzed. The venom from it must have caused paralysis. And so they tried to find whoever they could amongst them to cure their leader. And they couldn't find anyone. So someone said, you know what, those guys who have come from out of town, the ones that we rejected to take care of, why don't we ask them if they know someone who can treat this person? So they go and they ask the companions, radiallahu anhum, that our leader is sick. He's paralyzed. Can someone help him? So one of them said, Wallahi, I know how to cure him. But you guys were so rude that I refuse to do it unless you give me a flock of sheep. So they went back and they asked their leaders and they said, yeah, that's fine. So the Sahabi, he comes, and all the other Sahaba are wondering, how did the Sahabi swear he knows how to cure him? And he stands over the leader, non-Muslim, and he recites Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, until the end. As soon as he finishes the recitation of the Fatiha, he jumps up. His paralysis is gone. And I'm reminding you this was in Bukhari because I'm not pulling it from some random book that people will say this is one of those made up hadith. It's authentic hadith in Bukhari. What does this tell us? This tells us that the Quran, and let me finish the story and we'll get to the lessons. So the people were astonished. And the leader said, go and give them the flock of sheep. So all the Sahaba, they got happy. They said, yes, we're going to get a flock of sheep. We all want our share. And the Sahabi said, no. We're going to go ask the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ what we're going to do. So they go back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and they narrate the whole story. And he said, how did you know that was going to be a shifa? And he smiled and said, let everyone share in the portion and give me a share of that as well. He said this. So this tells us that the Quran has a shifa in it that is beyond what people often perceive. It is not simply an academic shifa, where yes, you read the Quran, you extract a lesson, and then you can become better. Yet this is one of the primary objectives of it. But there is another objective in it, which is the tilawa itself has a shifa in it. And scientists today, they study how to help people who are sick. And they try all sorts of things. Music, they try instruments, they try ultrasound, they try all sorts of different ways of using waves and sound to improve someone's health. And they have found that nothing is better when it comes to using sound than the human voice. This is when someone is at his deathbed, they want his family to be there to speak to him. The odds of that making that person persist and feel stronger is more likely than putting the radio on. And it's something to do with the way that the human voice, Allah has made it. So this voice that we have been given, when it recites the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has a deep shifa in it for those who believe. That's why Allah said, shifa'u rahmatun lil mu'mineen, for those who really believe this. And today people often have trouble with this. When Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he used to say this. He said, I used to travel many times from city to city, and I would get sick on my journey. And they didn't have ERs every 20, 30 miles. He said, I couldn't find a doctor. I would treat myself with the Quran. I would treat myself with Al-Fatiha. And we have so many other surah that we know that we use to recite for the sake of shifa. And the reason I'm making this point so emphatic is to recognize that this month should be a month of obsession with the Quran. It is a month of immersion. And this is where we go back to what the word siyam actually means. It doesn't mean not to eat and drink. The asl of siyam we find in Surah Maryam. Maryam alayhi salam, she was all of a sudden pregnant with Isa alayhi salam. And she asked Jibreel, what am I going to do? People are going to come to me and say, why do you have a baby in your stomach? What have you been doing? So she was commanded, فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. That she's being told to say that I have vowed to Ar-Rahman, to Allah, Sawm. Does that mean she's not going to eat and drink? No. It meant that she was going to abstain and refrain from what? From speaking. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. Today I'm not going to speak to anyone. So fasting, the origin of the word Sawm or Siyam is to refrain or to abstain or to hold back. It doesn't mean not to eat and drink. This is a fiqhi definition for the validity of our fast. So if we take the month of Ramadan to be a month of imsak, a month of abstention, a month of refraining, what are we refraining from? We're refraining from anything that keeps us from getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in our context is refraining from anything that keeps us away from the Quran. Anything that keeps you away from the Quran. And this is why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ حَظُّهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ الْجُوعِ وَالْعَطْشِ. People, those who think it's just about not eating and drinking, perhaps people are going to fast, they get nothing out of their fasting except for hunger and thirst. Because they didn't really refrain from the real refraining. If one is being asked to refrain from what his body needs to survive, food and drink, then it is awla, it is preferable, and it is more befitting that he abstain from that which he doesn't need. We don't need to watch TV. We don't need to sit on the computer and to be on all these different mediums of communication. We don't need to be listening to the radio and to music. We don't need to be doing so many things frivolous throughout the day. And Ramadan is that chance, again, that getaway, that boot camp, the institution, the intensive that says, refrain from everything for 1 month and dedicate yourself to the Quran because it is a shifa. Dedicate yourself to the Quran because this is why Ramadan has been given to you. This is why Allah said the Quran came in Ramadan. And if you have that attitude, your Ramadan will change. None of us go on lunch break in Ramadan. We don't need to eat. You have an extra hour of Quran. Even for Taraweeh, it's a sunnah. But why do we go to Taraweeh? We said there's a shifa in the recitation. You come and you listen. It's amazing. And I would love actually one day to do a scientific study on this. How is it possible? What do we get possibly? What is our soul being fed through hearing the recitation that allows us to stand for 30 days when otherwise we would collapse? There's no way you could do it. When you can go for a couple hours of sleep, go work for 8 hours, come back and do it again. In your free time, you're reading another 20, 30 pages. So it's not possible according to the scales of the dunya. So when you really think and say, this is a month, that this month is supposed to be nothing else. Nothing else. I'm not going to touch it. The TV, and this is the catastrophe of our ummah, subhanAllah. Ramadan in the Middle East, and I think maybe in the subcontinent, I'm not sure. The best TV shows of the year are produced for Ramadan. The best. And it keeps people, it's a fitna. Because they know after iftar, people want to sit and be entertained. And it's a way to keep them from going to the masajid. It's a way to keep them, you know you have the viewership. And for us to say, no, refrain. Refrain from all of this. Deactivate your account. And if you have social media, deactivate it. You want to communicate with people the rest of the year? Fine. 1 month, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, just get to know my book. Every day we hear, subhanAllah, whether we like to or not. A'udhu billah, we hear about the most disgusting people. You hear about this transgender folks now. Every day it's being shoved down your throat. You hear about their life. You hear about what they're doing. You hear about these pop stars, these movie stars. 1 month, reorient yourself with the anbiya. Remind yourself, we probably forgot. What is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam again? What is the story of Musa alayhi salam again? What is the story of Yunus? What is the story of Musa alayhi salam? Let me stop and rejuvenate my soul with this. Let me spiritually cleanse myself from all the garbage I have been fed. So what I want to tell us in the short time we have left, Ramadan is a program. It is institutionalized. And this is why Allah, He put different, almost like subjects that need to be studied. There is a period of time for Quran that we must all make a sincere goal how much we're going to read. And that's just the tilawa part. You should have a portion that you read in Arabic. That cannot be abandoned. Do whatever you think is up to your power. But aim high. If you aim really high and you only do like 75%, alhamdulillah. If you aim really low and you get 100%, what have you achieved? My goal is to read 10 ayahs a day. Alhamdulillah, I did 10 a day. The other guy said, I'm going to read 20 pages, and he did 15 a day. Who's better? Right? Aim high. Ramadan teaches us one thing, subhanAllah, is that we can do more than we imagined. This is what it teaches us. You just can't perceive what you'd be able to do. So one, set a goal for Quran. Their question? Go ahead. Good, great question. Good. So the question is very good. It has to do with quantity versus quality. And this is where there was a difference between how people did things oftentimes in the past, the scholars, and what I perhaps might recommend for people today. If you're someone who is regularly engaged with the Quran, you read it on a regular basis, or you study it regularly, then spend the month reading it because you're studying it outside of Ramadan anyway. You know, you're in a tafsir class, you read tafsir regularly, you attend durus, you attend programs. If you're someone who doesn't read the Quran regularly or study the Quran regularly, give time for that as well. So there should be a portion for reading that should not be abandoned, and there should be a portion for study as well. And that can be as deep as you want to. And you can say, okay, I'm only going to study this surah. This Ramadan, I'm going to spend my time in the tafsir of the surah. I'm going to spend my month memorizing the surah, spend my month with this juz. So have goals for your educational relationship with the Quran and for your recitation aspect of it. And I don't want us to think that it's either or. Don't be the person that says, well, I don't think it's important that I read it all, I'm just going to study. Nor the person who says that I am going to do the opposite, right? I'm only going to read and I'm not going to study at all. Have time for both. And this is the beauty of Ramadan. We have the time to do all of these things. And it's a blessing now, this time of year. I think for half of us in this room are probably, at the age where we have a break in the summertime, hopefully. So you have the opportunity that you're not, forced to have 40, 50 hours consumed by your job. You can say, you know what? I can spend extra time. And for those of you who do work, we have vacation every single year. Use the vacation in Ramadan. Use it as a chance. You don't have to use all of it. But say, look, the last few nights of Ramadan, at least certain days, I'm going to say, I want 100% focus. I want to be able to dedicate myself in Ramadan. Yeah, I can go camping another day and save my vacation days. But these days need to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my suggestion is I don't believe in giving a prescriptive approach, but you need to think about what you can handle. So if you say, I can give myself 2 hours a day of study. So I can give myself an hour for reading. Maybe I can give myself an hour for study. Whatever you think you can do, try to do that, right? Some people, I recommend people to do what they're motivated towards. If you love a surah, study that surah. And have a long-term approach. Inshallah, we live to see 20 or 30 more Ramadan. May Allah allow us to see those. If one was to take this approach of mastery of a portion every single Ramadan, imagine where you would be in 20 or 30 years. Just imagine, you said, I'm going to read every day my juz, but I'm also going to, for this month of Ramadan, read the tafsir of one sipara or one juz. 30 years, you will have done the entire tafsir of the Quran. 30 years. So if you're 20 now, when you're 50, you'll have covered the entire tafsir. It's doable if you have that systematic, goal-oriented approach to Ramadan. And if it's just haphazard, you're never going to get there. So I advise people to do this. Either pick a favorite surah or a favorite juz, or if you don't care, start from the beginning and just keep going systematically through every single year and having these goals and these objectives. So one is the Quran front. The second front, which we'll speak more about tomorrow, but I want to touch about it, is the food front. It is impossible to achieve the spiritual objectives of Ramadan if you're psychologically prepared for a lavish month of food. For the men in this room first, don't let Ramadan be a month of i'tikaf for your wives in the kitchen. Please. Many sisters talk about this issue of they have to cook so much in Ramadan and every day has to be fresh food. Prophet ﷺ, think about, go back to any time one questions, how should I spend my Ramadan? Ask yourself, what do we think the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was doing? Do we think that every night his fire was on? And Aisha radiallahu anha, or one of his other wives radiallahu anhunna, was cooking fancy foods? What do we think? Do we have any narration the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a lavish Ramadan, a lavish iftar? We don't. And think about this when you host iftar as well. Think about the sunnah that you set, the precedent. The hadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, whoever establishes and revives a sunnah gets a reward for that sunnah. And whoever establishes actually a bad deed and that becomes a precedent, he will get the sin of that as well. When you invite people for iftar, hadith of Prophet Muhammad, man aftara sa'iman, right? Whoever breaks the fast of someone, whoever feeds the one who's fasting, falahu ajruhu mithluhu, right? Then he gets the reward of that person as well. Now, so this is encouraged that we invite people for iftar. But what type of iftar? Is it the competitive iftar? Well, I have the first iftar of the year. I need to have the iftari needs to be really, really good. It needs to have samosa. I need to have pakora. I need to have fruit salad. right? Need to have this, and then we'll pray after we have our first meal, and then we're going to have the biryani, and then we're going to have this. And then the second Ramadan, well, they had 4 things at their iftari, we need to have 5. The next one is, this is what happens. SubhanAllah, people, really, this is how our communities function. When people think about Ramadan, these things come to mind. And say, look, I want to set a precedent. If you want to be someone who's a trendsetter, have an iftar and have it very simple. Say, and if you want, we can even announce this, we're going to have a prophetic iftar. We're going to break our fast with a few dates. We're going to go and pray. We're going to come back and have a simple meal. It's very simple. 1-course meal. Maybe it's rice, right? Maybe it's pasta, whatever it is. 1 course. And that's it. And we end early and we get to the masjid before the Isha. And then we're able to enjoy our tarawih, right? Usually the consequence of those who indulge is what the Prophet said in another hadith. رُبَّ قَائِمٍ حَظُّهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ السَّهْرُ. Perhaps someone, he stands and he prays. Allahu Alam, this might be referring to tarawih and the tahajjud. And he gets nothing out of his standing except for fatigue. His mind is somewhere else. He's not focused. How can you be focused after you ate a whole bunch of food? And we know who those people are. They pray next to you and you realize, okay, the person's breath gives away that his belching and his movements, that he's not there, his mind is not there. And so again, imsak, refraining when you're there and the food is presented to you. Do you mindfully eat? Those of you who were here a few months ago, we spoke about mindful eating in the Jummah. فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. And you stop and you look at your food and you eat it slowly, you will get full much faster. And this will inculcate shukr as well. When you eat quickly and you're doing other things, it's not going to have that. And this is why the tafsir of the hadith, the explanation, that the kafir eats from 7 stomachs and the Muslim, he eats from 1. This is not a literal hadith, right, that the kafir's stomach is 7 times larger. The non-Muslim, the way he eats is different. He's indulging in a different way. He's shoving food down his stomach. He's not mindful of what he's eating. So he doesn't get the barakah of it. The concept of barakah is something we need to revive. That you can be extremely full. I know I see some of the huffaz in this room. The people who lead salah hardly eat anything. And it actually blows my mind. You've been fasting the entire day, and then you're going to lead salah for the next 2 hours, and you've literally eaten maybe a couple hundred calories. There is barakah in food if you believe in that. And you eat little, but you eat it mindfully. And you eat it with gratitude. If you eat it with this attitude, a few dates, you go and you pray. When you come back, you're actually going to be less hungry than if you ate the entire iftari quickly and you ate all the fried foods and you come back to it, right? So another part of imsak and the program of Ramadan is to check your physical health. When I hear what commonly happens after Ramadan, people say, I need to go on my Ramadan diet, my post-Ramadan diet. What does that mean? That means Ramadan was the month that we put on weight. How can that be? How can it be in the month of not eating, people put on weight? So check yourself. Have imsak, have refraining. I'm going to weigh myself before the month of Ramadan and ensure that I don't put on weight in Ramadan by making sure I don't eat too much. Tell your wives, tell your husbands, tell one another, let's cut back on the indulgence of it. We don't need to have all the, gulab jamun and ras malai and all these things every single day. Yes, you can have these things once in a while, but it's a month of imsak. And people say, when you ask people what is Ramadan all about, they say it's about feeling for the poor. This is one aspect of it, one aspect. But if you really believe that's one of the objectives, then the poor do not get to have a lavish iftar in the end of the day. Have an iftar like they would probably have as well. Right? Try it. See what happens to you. So we have a plan for Quran, of reading, of listening in the Taraweeh prayer, and we have a goal now of how we eat. The third thing we have now, which I want to discuss, is the social objectives. Ramadan is a month which, although fasting is a very individual act, it is actually a month that is very social in nature. It's a social institution where we come together for our salawat, we come together for iftar, and we come together for taraweeh. And people usually are frustrated that our communities, it's tough to retain people. It's tough that people come in the Ramadan and they leave after Ramadan. One of the reasons perhaps is that we don't take Ramadan as an opportunity to actually expose ourselves to the people who don't come often. Those of you who are sitting here are the regulars in the masjid. You're not the ones who come 30 days of the year or 1 day of the year. When you're here in Ramadan and there's iftar and there's taraweeh, who do you communicate with? Do you stay with the exact same people? who are your friends that are the 5 times a day in the masjid, or who are the everyday masjid goers? Or do you say, this is an opportunity for me to do da'wah to the people who don't come throughout the year? I mean, think about it from the perspective of someone who's on the fringe. He or she is not practicing, or marginally practicing, or doesn't like coming to the masjid. And they come for 30 days, and not a soul acknowledges their presence. Think about it. How would you feel? Every day they come for Isha, they come for Taraweeh, and no one says Assalamu alaikum to them. No one asks them their name. Why would that person want to afterwards stay? Why would he want to be a part of this community? He wouldn't. So take it as a personal responsibility, the social programming that has been embedded, that when I see people who are not regulars, I'm going to make it a point to get to know who they are. Let them feel like they're welcome, that we want them to be a part of it. So now after Ramadan, they say, you know what? I like those people. I want to be with those people. They were genuinely curious to know who I was. They were genuinely interested in my well-being. And now I'm going to be vested in them as well. And inshallah, with that attitude, we may see growth in the numbers that come. So my advice, and I know this is hard for some people, do not have your sacred spot in the musalla. We have this a lot often, where that spot is saved for so-and-so, or this is a spot I pray every single day. Be someone who's willing to move around a bit. Whether it's at iftar time, whether it's at Taraweeh, maybe it's after Taraweeh prayer, just a little bit. Asking someone how he is. Oh, I haven't seen you. Are you new to this community? And if the guy says, no, I live down the street. I've been here for 20 years. That tells you something. And say, okay, would you like to? We'd love to have you more often. How can we get to know you better? And so the social part shouldn't be neglected. And this really was a golden opportunity, right, that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Sahaba took advantage of. It's a month for outreach. And it's the only time that you get where people are going to say, you know what, every night I'm going to come. So these 3 things I want to kind of quickly wrap it up with, so give time for questions. But the Quran, give it significant time. And the only way you're going to have that if you're able to have imsak from everything else. So when we talk about setting goals, it's not wishful thinking. In order for me to get 2 hours of Quran in a day, this means I have to cut 2 hours out of my day. So I'm going to refrain from what? 30 minutes of the TV that I have, that normally, that's out. Right? The 30 minutes that I'm on the internet, social media, it's out. Right? The minutes that I spend texting on my phone, that is going to be out. And now you free yourself up for the Quran. Number 2, like we mentioned, the physical aspect. Give yourself, write it out. What type of food you plan on eating, how simple it's supposed to be. And if you're going to have iftars or go to iftars, ensure that they are befitting of your presence. And the third, like we mentioned, was a social aspect. Communicate with the community. Get to know people in the community. Forge new relationships with people you don't know. And hopefully with these 3 institutions that I want to speak about today, it'll offer us a better chance. The last thing I wanted to mention has to do with that same issue of the null effects of refraining. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has many ahadith that are very scary actually about the month of Ramadan and about fasting. That where he said, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةً فِي أَنْ يَضَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. Oftentimes the month of Ramadan, being a social institution, gives us more chances actually to gossip. It's just their nature. When you get together more often, the opportunity for rumors and for gossip and for vain talk can actually increase. So it's a test actually. The hadith, the Prophet said, whoever is unable to give up false speech and acting upon it, which is by their acting on rumors, spreading rumors, talking about nonsense, then Allah has no need that he leave his food and his drink. And this is why some of the scholars from the actually the Zahiri school, they said that it breaks your fast if you backbite. So if one was to gossip or backbite, they said it nullifies your fast. You'd have to redo it after the month of Ramadan. This is what the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is getting at. That Allah doesn't need, He doesn't benefit from our fasting. We benefit from it only if you do it properly though. So now I give that example. Imagine you said, I'm going to go to a personal trainer, or I'm going to go on some exercise routine. It tells me I have to exercise certain minutes a day. It tells me I have to eat certain foods in the day. And if you were to exercise and then come home and break your diet, you got no benefit out of the routine. The same thing in Ramadan. If you just don't eat for those hours, then you go to iftar and you backbite or you gossip in Ramadan, what do we get out of this? Nothing. Nothing. This is why we have the hadith of the muflis, the hadith of the bankrupt, where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he asked the companions that who is the bankrupt? They say, Ya Rasulullah, the one who has no money. No dollars, no cents, no dinars, no dirhams. He said no. But it's the one who has had salah and he had fasting and he had sadaqat and all those things. But he abused himself. He abused his tongue. He spoke ill of people. He wronged people. So those will be taken from him one after another. Your fasting, your wealth, your salah, all the things could be taken away if we don't learn abstention. So advise one another at iftar. Advise one another in tarawih. Advise one another every opportunity. Nothing goes down, that nothing enters the tongue that Allah does not like, and nothing goes out of the tongue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like. So the true fasting is the fasting of the tongue. It has to be. So that and the tongue extends by qiyas to what you type. So no one should say, well, I wasn't talking, right? I'm just typing, right? I'm texting and I'm tweeting. No, this is the same, right? So think about that deeply. Am I refraining from these things? Can I refrain for 1 month from engaging in this type of behavior and dedicating myself to the Quran? And then what do I get out of it? That person who graduates from this institution of deep studying the Quran, what is he going to be after that? This is why the ulama, they mentioned that the sign that Allah has accepted someone's Ramadan is that after Ramadan the effects actually linger. We see people who fast Ramadan, Eid, we see that it wasn't real. It wasn't real. Because the behavior hadn't changed. So really, the advice, analyze yourself deeply. I know our culture always tells us to tell each other that we're great and we're amazing. Yes, we're good people, inshallah. Yes, we should have self-esteem. But we're also people who say that we can achieve far more. And we all have shortcomings. We all have vices. We all do things that are frivolous. And say, this month, let me train myself. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. If everyone is doing it, it's not going to be me. I will be the one who has the Ramadan revolution. I'm going to revolutionize my life in this month so that it becomes a means of taqwa. So it becomes a lingering trait. After Ramadan, I'm God conscious. After Ramadan, I'm aware. After Ramadan, I'm still going to be saved. Saved from the heedlessness of being forgetful. Saved from the behaviors that I do that are inappropriate. Saved from the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll stop there, and I want to actually give time for a lot more question and answer. We have about 25 minutes? Is that right? Right. So, any questions about what we've mentioned so far? Or comments? We have many very learned people in this audience, so please share your guidance and your wisdom. I know Sheikh Munib is here, brother. Yeah. Yes? Better means getting more lavish or not getting as lavish? Okay. So getting worse. Okay. So this needs to be addressed directly. Again, it's something where it just needs to be told directly that what is our goal. Has the goal of any of the prophets simply been quantity? We just want tons of people to be around, no matter what. This has never been the goal of the Anbiya. The goal has always been, it's about quality. And what does Allah say in the Quran? كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةٍ كَثِيرًا. We don't need a lot of people to succeed in this life. We need a small group of committed people. And tell this to the leadership of the community. Our success, this is a very corporate mindset. Right? And I'm saying this from one coming from a corporate background. We define success in we take our corporate understanding and then we put it into the masjid. Our metric is what? The success of our Ramadan is by how many people attended, how many people that we fed, how many dollars came into the bank account, right? This is a false metric, right? This is completely erroneous. And if we don't call people out on this and say, this is not how Islam works, this is how materialists work, because it's the bottom line that matters. We don't work this way. We don't work this way. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I challenge us to say, well, let's try. If we really are here to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 40th year anniversary, right? Let's have the 40th year be the year we decide to follow the sunnah. The 40th year is the year of wisdom, subhanAllah, right? The prophets, right? Usually at 40 is the age of wisdom. So you can say, inshallah, we're forgiven. The first 39 years we were immature. Let's try this year. We don't need to have. I really think that, that I almost want to say that having the iftari is a bid'ah, pretty much, to be honest. I almost feel that way. It's such an innovation that we have this meal before a meal, right? So again, how are we going to do this? This might take some gradual work. You start at your own house at least. You start. When you have an iftar, and it doesn't engage in that type of modeling. We learn. We human beings learn through modeling, right? I learned from my parents. I learned from the masjid I attended. So growing up, I thought that this was the sunnah pretty much, that you have this pre-meal, you pray, and then you have a post-meal, right? And we need to undo this in the hearts of the community. So I'm those of you who know me, I will be a straight shooter, and I hope you guys are as well, right? We don't need to be, Jerry Seinfeld the other day was talking about how he's sick and tired of the political correctness that people have, right? Everything doesn't need to be so politically correct. Call people out. The truth is the truth, right? Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'. Allah, show us the truth as the truth so we may follow it. Wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba'. But if it's false, it's false. I don't care if we've been doing it for 30 years. I don't care if this is what everyone does in Pakistan and India and Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia, they sleep half the day. So we're going to do this too now, right? No, it doesn't matter what we've done. Go back. Prophetic fasting. And this is, I mentioned this to earlier in another group gathering. There was a brother in another community, a young man, 21 years old. And he told his mother, this was a few years ago, and she came to me. She said, my son refuses to fast this Ramadan. So I said, what's going on? She said, well, he said to me that, Mom, every year, the same Muslim community, they fast. And every year, they come out of Ramadan being the exact same people. So what's the purpose of fasting? It's useless to these people. And he said, I'm not leaving Islam, but I find fasting to be useless, right? There is some truth in what he actually is saying. That when we practice Islam this way, what do we get out of it? We don't get much out of it, right? It's just like the sub person, like if you're praying and your mind is somewhere else, what do you get out of your salah? You don't get anything, right? So, you guys have some power. I know the people in this room have some voices, right? And we have collective. Sign up, get a petition going. You can put my name on it, right? We don't want the iftar to be the way that it normally is done. This is not the sunnah. And we're actually teaching we're actually innovating something that when the youth follow this, we're responsible for this, right? Mm-hmm. Allah, Jazakallah khair. It's a beautiful point. So I don't think that there's anything contradictory between what both of you are saying. It's not that we're not going to offer food and offer quality food, but to what extent is it offered? So is a plate of rice, biryani, sufficient iftar, right? Or does it need to be accompanied with 4 or 5 or 6 other things, right? And which half of them end up in the trash, right? So this is the issue. So it's not about feed 1,000 people, khair or barakah, right? But how do you feed them? That's the question, right? Because you might argue the opposite as well. You might think you're getting ajr for it, but you're actually, if your niyyah is not straight, or if you're actually causing them to have a mindless tarawih and a mindless prayer because their mind is just consumed with the food coma, maybe you're going to carry some of that as well. So, you had a question? This is a tough one, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but again, it goes back to the culture we have created. We have created our institutions around food. And so it's not the people's fault, it's the institution's fault for saying this is how we run our community. When we want you to show up, we bribe you with food. And so I'm not saying never have food, but you've trained the person to think this way, right? And even that being said, I don't think there's anything problematic with a family coming to the masjid for iftar, because there's some good that comes with that. When people come who can't afford it, they come now to the masjid. They're in a certain atmosphere. They get to pray the Maghrib prayer. There's also good things that come with it, right? But hopefully those people are decent enough to say that I'll at least pay my share of this. I'll donate, the value of what I'm eating. It's not just coming in and taking advantage of the donation. So it's I don't think it's very black and white, but to each person what his nafs is satisfied with, right? Wallahu a'lam, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also it's a very it's a tough question because each person is different and each person has different types of obligations. I generally don't think it's advisable to be engaged in ibadah all night and then sleep all day, because that also goes against the objective of fasting. Yeah. Well, okay, so yeah, if it's 5 hours after suhoor, right, it's different than from 12 to 5 or from. So I mean, again, this is not a fiqhi domain to get into, so it's permissible. One just has to ask himself that, is this truly getting me to a state where I can worship better, or is this just me trying to kill time? So innamal a'malu binniyat. Some people can persist with less sleep. Some might need a little bit more. I suggest people try to push themselves a bit, pace themselves, of course, as well. But then your body has a right over you. So there's no magic formula. I don't know if anyone else might have some words of wisdom to add to this. Please, I don't want to usurp this mic by myself. So if anyone has, if these questions, I'm sure some of you might have things that Sheikh Munib, please, if you have something to add, Big Saab, please, Nearby, Abdurrahman, all of you here, right? Everyone here has sufficient wisdom to fatwa by committee. Other questions? Any fiqh questions that people might have? Because I know oftentimes these things come up. No? Okay. Yes? I will defer that to one of my elders who maybe has a better answer. Yeah, doesn't mean I succeeded very well. This is a really, really tricky one, and I don't think that, again, there's a perfect answer, because the sad reality is that both men and women want to have a good chance to enjoy, the father and the wife, or the husband and the wife want to enjoy Ramadan. And each child will demand something different. So how do they balance responsibilities? Culture is going to play a big role in this. So I don't think it's appropriate for me to say this is what should be done. Some cultures, it's understood that the mother has no problem saying that I have my responsibilities and my husband's not going to have to partake in these. Other cultures, it's a little more egalitarian. So this should be negotiated perhaps with the spouse and say, how are we both going to achieve our goals? I think one of the ways that can help with this is, and I actually have thought about this, and I made a decision this Ramadan. So my son, is young, and he goes to preschool in the morning. So I decided I could keep him out in the month of Ramadan. He's only 3. What is he going to get out of Ramadan? So I decided to keep him in preschool for an extra month, so that both me and my wife have more opportunities for ibadah. And I think I'm satisfied with the quality of school. I'm not worried. But these type of decisions that people have to subjectively make, that if I need extra time for ibadah, well, what can I do? So does that mean that you might ask other people involved to help with the child, say, parents, grandparents, community members? Does it mean you have to take time off of work and take a vacation for a week or two? There's a lot of things. There's a lot of considerations. The easiest thing that I think will help this is if the husband, at the very least, is easy and the wife agree that we don't need to have a lavish meal. That's going to save at least a couple hours every day. So if you cook on the weekend for the week, and now you have saved an hour or two every single night, well, now hopefully there's a lot more time for ibadah. So I don't have a magical answer. I'm sorry. Someone please. I want to hear the answer. Someone who had young kids, maybe your dad has a good answer. I don't have an answer for this. I wish things were black and white, right? Any other questions? You do, but you don't want to like figure it out like 40 years from now, right? None of us do. So we collectively will take the wisdom from those who've been through the experience. Allahu alam, right? So it's very tricky. I mean, being a minority and having the work obligations that it's a whole different beast. And this is where people have to make the judgment calls, what they're comfortable with. Does that mean that the husband and wife, they decide to take shifts when it comes to tarawih, whatever? There's no answer for it, right? And I think this alludes to something which I think is important, is that we should be flexible with what people decide. You have couples who decide the man prays Isha, then he goes and he prays 8, he goes home and watches the kid, the wife comes and prays 8. Okay, maybe that's not what we want to do, but if someone does it, khair. It's not our culture, it's not the way we practice things, but having this tolerance that if it's not haram, let's not make it a major issue. Let's not. I think this is what happens. People often feel guilty that if I don't do the expected, then something is problematic, right? What is expected? Only Allah expects things from you, no one else, right? So be mindful of Allah and don't worry about what the people are going to say. You know yourself best and your circumstances, right? Anyone else? Good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we have the program chair here, so hopefully he will take the suggestion. I think it's good. It's doable. Try here a little bit. That answer, which I know, I'm sure you're. That mindset speaks to a fundamental lack of tawakkul, which is saying that in order for me to succeed, I must do that. I must do something different than what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala would have intended. That's what it's saying. We don't like to be at direct. It's someone saying, I don't believe the prophetic way of doing things is going to lead to the community success. But no one had the audacity to say that. So they package it in this other way, right? Well, that's what you're saying. You're saying that I don't believe if I follow the sunnah that this masjid will succeed. So I'm going to deviate from the sunnah because I know better how to make this community grow and flourish. Say it the way it is, right? SubhanAllah, I've seen people who have come and gotten a unique experience somewhere, and that one person will give so much more money because he has said, I got something so unique, a spiritual enjoyment I never had, and I want this to persist. So that person will give thousands of dollars. Where do we think that is coming from? Do we think it's coming from our marketing talent? It's coming from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, right? I know it wasn't, but I wanted to cut to the chase. I think this stems from, again, our misunderstanding of human psychology. We are taught in the society that you're happy when you're on the receiving end, right? So this is why when people think of the word altruism, of doing things without an ulterior motive for others, it's strange to most people. Yet we know actually from science that this is actually leads to a lot more success. People who are altruistic are happier than people who don't do for others and they're on the receiving end, right? So I want to get at this point more. If someone's experience, if you allow someone to experience deep spiritual enjoyment and gratitude, that will actually lead to them giving a lot more sadaqah than you giving them a fancy entertaining program. But one has to believe that first. And I don't think people have bought into that concept yet. Right? I mean, that's why the ulama, they mentioned, why was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ most generous in the month of Ramadan? There was a reason for it. Because Ramadan is embedded with opportunities for shukr. Shukr for the Quran, shukr for food, shukr for the masjid, shukr for your community. And that's what made him say, I want to share this with people. But when you don't have that attitude, and your perspective is the exact opposite, then what are you going to do? I can go off all day, so. It is a mind shift. It is a mind shift, right? But what better time than to create a mind shift than Ramadan? You cannot do it the other 11 months of the year. This 30 days, and this is what, it's a boot camp. Right? So 30 days you beat this into people's heads, and they get the point. And the thing with change, no one likes change. And the first year they all object to anything. If a masjid was praying 8 and you said 20, they're going to object. You said 20, you did 8, they're going to object. You had food and then you changed to no food. No matter what you change, people are going to object. After 1 year, it becomes normal. So if you actually did things properly, everyone is going to complain. And they're going to say, okay, this is the new normal. And they actually will like the new normal, inshallah, right? So it's just that ability to say, I'm willing to put it on the line. I'm willing to trust that the sunnah will succeed. It's a challenge, right? Wallahu a'lam, right? So. Any other questions? Yes? It's okay. Jazakumullah khair. So my suggestion for time management is very simple. Everyone should try to have an Excel spreadsheet, either draw it on paper or have it on the computer. Have every hour of the day charted in Ramadan. 24 hours a day. You put your time in for sleep, you put your time in for work, and then you have every other free minute, you have put in there something very, very clear. So I sleep from 12 to 3. I get up, I have suhoor, I go back to sleep until whatever it is, 8 or 9. I get up and I go to work until 5 o'clock. Now I have I have a lunch break from 1 to 2. This is the Quran block. I come back from 5 to 7, right? I have an hour for this, an hour for that, an hour for that. So this way you have something to keep you honest. This is the best thing that I found that works. Everyone who tries this, find them generally succeeding. Because we like to fulfill our own goals. But if someone is just going to haphazardly, wishfully think that, I'm just going to try to squeeze in time whenever I get a free minute, it's not going to happen. So this is going to be alarm based. Well, I have an alarm that I have to get up at this time because now I have to move on to this part of my day, which is Quran, or it's reading tafsir, or it's doing whatever it might be doing, right? So regimenting your day in this is, I think, the best way to do things. And I think if you do this, you should be doing it all the time. Because when you do this all the time, it'll eliminate all that empty, wasted time. You won't have those because you'll feel guilty saying, I'm going to put in a block for 90 minutes of Netflix. No, who's going to do that, right? But when you don't have a calendar, or you don't have a schedule, it's very easy to say that, I got nothing to do. Okay, let's just go and watch this for another hour and a half. So if you regiment your schedule, this won't happen. So try that. Yeah, that's why in your case, if you're like a nurse or in this medical profession or anyone who works, it's what can you do? This is the reality of your dunya, that you need to work, so you have to sleep. Hopefully in these work jobs, you only work 3 or 4 days a week, right? Yeah, so hopefully you can make up for it in the days that you're not working, right? So, wallahu a'lam, right? Other questions? Yeah. Procrastination, having a schedule. It's the exact same thing. Because you can't procrastinate on a schedule, because once you miss one thing, well, you can't push it to the next hour because there's something else that has to be done. So keeping yourself honest. And another way to keep yourself honest with that is having a partner in this. So if you're married, you have your wife, right? Maybe it goes back to it, right? If you're not married, you have friends. Say, let's keep each other accountable. So my goal was to read 1 juz a day or half a juz a day, or to read 5 pages of tafsir. Let's meet at Tarawih and see if we met each other's goals. Having accountability is a very easy way to motivate yourself to fulfill those goals. So, Wallahu alam. Anything else? Someone mentioned something about qiyam. I want to actually quickly touch on that. It's another issue in our community. Qiyam culture. Qiyams are not meant to be parties. And again, I understand that there are those who would not come to the masjid otherwise. Let them come. Let the qiyam be for those people who don't have the inclination to do these things, or who, for whatever reason, they want to come. But if you're really, really, really sincere about wanting to be efficient in your time, what are you going to get more out of? Sitting either in your house or in the masjid, whatever it might be, and reading the Quran, or doing any other valuable deed, or loafing around outside of the masjid. I mean, the qiyam begs that to happen. I mean, you can't help it pretty much, right? The speaker, he comes in, he gives a talk, and then there's a 45-minute chai break, and then of course you take the chai break, becomes an hour and a half, right? It's embedded in there that you're going to waste a lot of time, right? And this is actually a type of ghurur, right? وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. It's a type of deception. There's a deception in thinking you're doing something good when you're actually doing something frivolous. And be very cautious of that. This is the ulama would always speak about this concept of wara, of being cautious. That what am I really doing? Am I going to this qiyam because I want to socialize? Am I going to that qiyam because I want to pray? And because I want to listen to a valuable speech? And if you have a good niyyah, then go and benefit with that niyyah. But ask yourself that question beforehand. Or else you're going to be, the hadith said, you got nothing but you're tired. Qiyam all night long and you got exhausted. And then you slept the entire day and your hasanat did not increase. So be sincere about this as well. I find it actually interesting. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his culture, there wasn't a culture of mass qiyams. I'm not saying qiyams are anything problematic, but it wasn't something, the norm wasn't for the community to gather from midnight to fajr and to be doing things. It was to be doing ibadah in solitude. And I know motivation is a big issue. I study motivation for a living, and people do things better as a group. But that means we can do things together. Sisters should all meet at a sister's place and have a sister's qiyam. Brothers can have a small brother's qiyam. But it's serious and it's focused. You don't have to deal with all the other issues that come along with that, right? So I think about these things deeply and sincerely and say what's really happening. So be cautious of the qiyam culture, because again, this is something which is foreign to the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? And I'm not saying it's forbidden or it's haram, but are you trying to be just someone who fulfills the bare minimum, or are you trying to be someone who's ascribing for much higher levels? Think about that deeply. Wallahu a'lam. Anything else? So that's maybe a point for this. Advising. Are you in the programming committee for qiyams? Anyone here? Tell the people who run the qiyams, I think you guys did a good one last year on the 27th night, to really make them focus on more ibadah. So make a lot more time for just sitting and reading Quran. We're all here together. 500 people, 30 minutes, be silent and read the Quran. We're all here together, 20 minutes, make istighfar. This is the type of qiyam we should be having. Right? And this way you'll see, now all of a sudden what's going to happen? All those who came for the party are not going to show up, which is great. Okay, it's fine. That's not what they want. And those who came for benefit will get benefit, right? This is how our qiyam should be. There can be salah, and there should be a lot of time for solitude. Or small group, maybe, a few people who might be giving some ta'aleem or something else, right? But they're not meant to be festivals. And this is why they shouldn't be geared around trying to find, the biggest national speakers to bring 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000 people on the campus at night. That's not success, right? That's not success. Wallahu a'lam. 9:45 is Isha? Okay. We'll end, so we have time for wudu and for sunnah and everything else. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to understand Ramadan the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ intended it for it to be. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from overeating in the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our tongues from saying anything unimportant in the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us obsessed and in love with the Quran in the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us purified and to be cured in every way possible through our exposure to the Quran. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who through our fasting enter the beautiful gate of Rayyan on the Day of Judgment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reunite us with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to allow us to drink from his hands. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله